So first and foremost, thank you all for coming to our program's virtual info session and our little mini networking event here. My name is Dr. Erin Stiles, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to our session. So before we start, I'm just going to practice my tech skills, and we're just going to run two really quick polls to just get a sense of how we all got here and what we're all doing. So my first question for all of you is, how did you hear about this info session? So did you find us on Twitter or on Instagram or LinkedIn through some email announcement? Did you find us on our own website or word of mouth or some other interesting possibility? And for those of you who are picking other, sound off in the chat because I want to know how you found us if it was some other interesting way. I should have put an option that said somebody made me come, and then all of our current students could have picked that one. All right, wonderful. So I'm seeing that a lot of people found us on Instagram. So we'll just share that really quick. It looks like a lot of people found us on Instagram, email announcement. A few people found us on LinkedIn, website, word of mouth, other. Great, thank you so much for answering that question. All right, and then I have one more question for you. So I am zooming in from Toronto, and I'm assuming that most of our current students are joining us from Toronto, downtown Toronto, the GTA. But where's everybody else zooming in from? Are you guys local? Are you in the GTA? Somewhere else in Southern Ontario? Somewhere else in Canada? Somewhere overseas or abroad? Let us know. And if you guys aren't in Toronto, if you're somewhere else in Southern Ontario, somewhere else in Canada, or if you're not in Canada at all and you're joining us from the States or from somewhere overseas, let us know in the chat, where are you guys coming from? Where are you joining us from today? And thank you so much for joining us if you're not in Toronto. Hamilton, thank you for coming from Hamilton. Where else are we coming from today? Hi from Halifax, Barry. Hi, Halifax. Hi, Barry. Moncton, India. Amazing. Okay, I'm going to end this poll because I think everybody who's going to answer is going to answer. But we have most people coming to us from Toronto and a few people from elsewhere. So thank you guys so much for participating in that. Guelph, great. Guelph is my alma mater school. I went to the University of Guelph. Thanks for coming from Guelph. All right. So thank you so much for joining us from the GTA and from other places in Southern Ontario and from all over the world. We really appreciate you joining us. So I'm going to tell you all about the MedGen program and why I think you should join us in the MedGen program. And some of our current students are going to tell us some things that they like about the MedGen program. But before I do my TED Talk about our program, I just want to tell you a little bit about the field of medical genomics for a few minutes. So a lot of you will already be familiar with some concepts from genomics from your undergrad learning or from your own research, but basically the study of the genome, the study of genomics, represents our ability to understand and interpret and then really harness and use the information that's in our DNA. So this is a really, really rapidly growing area, and it has really far-reaching implications from things that you do in the lab, so the laboratory bench, all the way to what doctors can do for patients at the patient's bedside. Genomics can play a role between the entire way between those two things. So medical genomics is this emerging clinical discipline that really relies on using genomic information about an individual to help inform decisions about their clinical care. And there's all these technical advancements in this relatively new field that are really driving us towards a brand new era of healthcare. So this field is just absolutely exploding right now. And we know a lot more about human genetics, about the human genome, how our DNA impacts our health than we ever have before. But there's this really fast-paced nature of these advancements that's creating this enormous knowledge gap that's getting wider and wider every year between cutting-edge genomics research that's happening in labs and current clinical practices. So what doctors can actually do for patients. And so how do we solve for that? What can we do to address that issue? So why would you do a master's in medical genomics? How is that going to possibly help here? So we've been collaborating with policymakers and researchers and industry leaders, healthcare leaders, and we've identified this emerging need for laboratory professionals and clinicians who can generate and integrate and interpret genetic and genomic data. That is what this program, the Professional Masters in Health Science in Medical Genomics, is situated to provide. So our goal is to really place our grads right at the vanguard, right at the cutting edge of genomic medicine. And we're really orienting ourselves towards this new way of thinking about research and clinical science, where genetic and genomic data are routinely being collected and analyzed all the time across a really wide range of patient populations and for lots and lots of different medical reasons. The program consists of this core set of lecture and discussion and project-based courses across a 2-year duration. Notably, there's no graduate thesis. That's a major difference between this program and most other graduate programs in our department and at other institutions. There's lots of information about all of these core courses that are listed here on this slide up on our program's website. But in brief, students are generally taking 2 pretty high intensity classes at a time. And so in the first year, we're focused on sort of foundational knowledge acquisition. You're learning a lot about human genetics, biological statistics, important genomic methods. And then in year 2, we flip into sort of this higher order thinking. We're thinking about how to communicate genetics to a whole bunch of different audiences. And we're thinking about some of the ethical and legal implications of genomic medicine so that when you get out there into the world, you don't do something unethical or break the law. And then our program culminates in this hands-on capstone practicum project. We're going to have an opportunity to hear a bit more about the practicum shortly as a part of from our panelists a little bit. And you can talk about it again at the end of our session. We're going to do some breakout rooms so you can ask some questions about the capstone if you want to. But in brief, as a sort of a general overview, our program has these great pre-existing relationships with a whole bunch of different groups across the GTA, across Southern Ontario, and a few international partners. And although the type of practicum projects that our students end up placed in are varied and they change over every year, in general, our projects tend to fall into these 4 major categories that are up on the slide. So clinical diagnostics, clinical research, working in the biotech or startup area, or working with government agencies. And there's also always this other opportunity. So we have this opportunity for our students to organize a self-directed placement if they have a specific interest that isn't reflected in our current placement partnerships. We'll work with those students to try to make sure that they get what they want out of their practicum. So the goal for the practicum is really to help you get what you want after the program. So what do our grads do and how are they going to address the knowledge gap that we've identified in our healthcare system? As a new professional program, obviously, this is a really important question for us. And as students who are thinking about joining us, I think it's safe to guess it's a pretty important question for you. So one of the big goals of our program is to prepare our grads with career-enabling skills for immediate practical implementation. Basically, so you can get a job right out of the gates at the end of grad school. And so with that in mind, our grads should expect to be suited for a wide variety of different professional roles. So we're going to go through some of the big ones. We know that our grads are perfectly suited to work in clinical diagnostics facilities, so in hospitals or in research labs. And there they're going to be really implementing the tools of genomic medicine and filling this major and growing need that we know is there in the realm of genome interpretation and variant analysis and annotation. And you'll learn a lot more about that in the program and how to get there and what that means. We also know that our grads are very attractive to publicly funded enterprises and private companies that are generating and interpreting genomic data, and that could either be for direct-to-consumer delivery or for the clinic. We know that based on our program's very strong emphasis on both verbal communication and written communication, our grads are suited to a huge variety of science communications, project management, consulting, and health policy roles. Some of our students join us and they're already clinicians or they're well on their way to becoming clinicians. And so when they graduate, these clinical grads are usually already pretty well established in their professional practice or they're on their very clear clinical trajectory. We would expect them to finish the program and then complete their clinical training or return to their existing clinical practice in some kind of new capacity. We also recognize, of course, that some of our students are very likely to pursue further education in a number of relevant fields. And this could be things like medicine, genetic counseling, law, or PhD level studies. So this degree really allows our grads to address an observed need in both the lab and the clinic-facing sides of the field of medical genomics. And it really enables these new kinds of career paths. And this is something that I just want to focus in on for a moment, because I opened this session by saying that the program, the MedGen program, is geared towards a new era of research in clinical science. And that's a bold statement. So I'd like to come back to that idea for a minute before I move on. In both the clinic and in research labs, genetic testing and genomic tests are really a growing component of the data that's being used to guide clinical treatment and to guide research. And these kinds of tests have grown, they've progressed. So originally we were analyzing single genes and then a couple of genes at a time, and then panels of multiple genes. And now we've moved up to the collection of whole exomes and whole genomes. And as we've done that, as we've seen that ramp up of the quantity of data, there's also been this subsequent increase in the complexity of both understanding that overwhelming amount of data and also communicating the results, communicating to clinicians and to other healthcare professionals and to patients. And so I just spent a couple of minutes telling you about some of the career opportunities that exist in the field right now that we know our grads are well suited for, that we see our grads getting hired into. But because this field is changing so much and so fast, in addition to this picture that I've painted here, in addition to all these possibilities, we also recognize that we're training our students for jobs that don't exist yet. And so in 2 years, when I give this talk again, there will be different things on this slide. If you join us in our next class, in our class of 2024, by the time you graduate, in addition to all these possibilities, there will probably be lots of other kinds of possibilities. And so that's something that we're upfront about right away. We know that there might be other options out there in a couple of years. So hopefully I've piqued your interest a little bit. Now I want to talk a little bit about our application process, specifically who are our ideal applicants, what do you have to submit in order to have a complete application, and what can you do to prepare. I also want to take this opportunity to highlight that everything that I'm about to share with you can also be found on our program website, which is here at the bottom of this slide, moleculargenetics.utoronto.ca/medical genomics. And one of our faculty members, I think, is going to drop that link in the chat now. Okay, who can apply? The MedGen program is the first program like this anywhere in Canada. And one of the things that makes us really special is that we're a dual stream program. So we accept students into either a clinical stream or a lab stream. And in a very general sense, to enter the clinical stream, you have to be a clinician already. So you have to have completed a PharmD or an equivalent degree in pharmacy or pharmacology, a PDP accredited BSc in food and nutrition, a nurse practitioner grad program, at least 1 year of med school while remaining in good standing with your med school, or be all the way done your medical degree. That's what you would need to get into the clinical stream. To get into the lab stream, which I suspect applies to more of you in this virtual room, applicants have to have completed a 4-year BSc in a relevant discipline. So I've listed a few here that we know are a great fit for us, but this is not an exhaustive list. And there's quite a bit of flexibility in the academic history, especially if applicants have been working professionally in the field. So if you're not sure if you're a good fit, feel free to drop it in the chat or ask a question or email us later. So the idea here is that these 2 student streams are going to move through the program as a cohort, take the same kinds of classes, do the same kinds of activities, and then play off each other. So there's this sort of experience-based discussion. I also want to note that our tuition is completely independent of stream of entry. So tuition for all of graduate programming across the University of Toronto is set annually by the university. And while the exact amounts for next year haven't been announced yet, domestic students should expect to pay somewhere just above $10K. International students should expect to be paying somewhere in the ballpark of $35,000 a year. As a professional program, we are not able to offer our students a research stipend. That's another major difference between our programming and a thesis-based program. That having been said, all of our students are eligible to apply for teaching assistant positions, university work study positions, and Ontario graduate scholarships. Some of our students are also eligible to apply for Temerity Faculty of Medicine needs-based bursaries, bank loans, and OSAP loans. So there are funding options, although they are slightly more limited than they would be in other types of programming. The options are there, we just have to seek them out. In terms of actually applying for the program, everything you would need to know about how to apply to the MedGen program, it's up on our website, and that's found in 2 major locations on our website. So details about our admissions pipeline are available right here. So this is the front end of our website is unchanged, moleculargenetics.utoronto.ca/medgen-admission-information, and that link is going to go up in the chat. And more specific instructions covering how to apply and what to submit in your application are provided right here. So the front end of the website again is unchanged, but now we're at -application-procedures. And again, that link is hopefully going to go up in the chat in a minute or two. So I'm not going to go over these elements in too much depth or detail in this session, since the information is provided very, very clearly on the website and it's very comprehensive there. But in brief, I will tell you a few things about our admissions process. All of the applications have to be submitted online through the University of Toronto's School of Graduate Studies. And you can find that, where will we find that? At a website that is not appearing for me here. There we go. Okay, so apply.sgs.utoronto.ca. So that's the SGS portal. That is the only way to apply to graduate programming at the University of Toronto. We have one more application deadline during this application cycle. So during this academic year, this is oriented towards a September 2022 start date. So if you would like to join us in the MedGen program in next September 2022, for this deadline, there are 2 important dates. So the first of these dates, which is May 1st, that's the deadline for your application package to be submitted onto that SGS portal. And the second date, which is 2 weeks later on May 15th, that's our documents deadline. So that's the deadline for the items that accompany your application package. So things like your reference letters can be uploaded to the SGS portal up to 2 weeks after the initial application package is due. So if you have questions about that process, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat anytime. And in the next couple of slides, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what should be included in that application package. All right, so what do you need to submit? A complete application package is going to include either 5 or 6 items, depending on whether you're a domestic applicant or an international applicant. Domestic students, you will need to submit 3 reference letters, a scan of your transcripts, which is to say an unofficial copy of your transcript, your CV, your transcript summary form. And I note that there's a lab stream transcript summary form and a clinical stream lab summary transcript form. So make sure you pick the right one. You'll also need to submit a letter of intent. And international students, you will also need to submit proof of English proficiency unless one of your transcripts very clearly indicates that the language of instruction was in English. Again, detailed instructions for completing these items are all listed on our application procedures website, but I want to draw your attention to a few key points on this list. While you're completing your School of Graduate Studies application, you're going to be asked to provide contact information for your 3 referees. These people will then be automatically contacted by the School of Graduate Studies when you press go to submit your application. So when you're all the way done your application and you press submit, SGS will automatically ping your references. So you should ask your references well in advance if they're up for writing a reference letter for you so that they're not surprised. We have a few tips up on our website to help you think about how to choose your referees. And so I would recommend checking those out. The transcript summary form is something that is very helpful to our admissions committee to help us figure out how well your academic or professional background has prepared you for success in our program. So it's going to ask you to outline courses that you've taken that touch on various academic nodes. But it's important to note that these categories that you're going to see in this form are not prescriptive of prerequisites for our programming. So for example, it's going to ask if you've taken any coding classes, if you've taken ethics classes, if you've taken a philosophy class or a law class. These are not classes that are required for entry into the program. We would just be really interested to hear about it if you have taken classes like that. So please tell us if you have. I also just want to strongly recommend that our international students or students who are applying to the program with international degrees, go and check out our international students page. We're going to post that link also in the chat now. And that's just really helpful for figuring out if you need to do anything different based on your international status. Oh, frozen slides. Here we go. All right, the letter of intent is important enough to your application package that it deserves its own slide and its own mini conversation. I would encourage you to include in your letter a few important elements. Please tell us why you're interested in joining us in the MedGen program. And inversely, tell us why we should be interested in you. What makes you wonderful? What's special about you? Tell us about your short-term plans if you get into the program and your long-term plans. How's it going to help you to do this programming? Please tell us about your relevant experiences. And if you want to, it's optional, you are welcome to use the letter of intent as an opportunity to tell us about any extenuating circumstances that may have impacted your grades. So if there's a hiccup in your transcript somewhere, you are welcome to use the letter of intent as an opportunity to justify that. I would encourage you also to steer clear of a few things. Please don't write your life story in your letter of intent. Please don't use the letter of intent to focus too much on things other than academic work, science work, clinical work, or research. And please don't focus too much in your letter of intent on your courses. You can reference courses in your letter, that's totally fine, but remember that the committee will also have your transcript summary form and they will also have your transcript. So you don't need to waste your space in the letter of intent telling us about your transcript. All right. Once the admissions committee has had a chance to go through all of these applications, all of our promising applicants are going to be invited to join us for a short virtual interview. These are going to take place over the month of June. You'll be notified via email. So when you submit your application package, please make sure that you have typed your email address in there correctly, and then keep checking that email address that you've listed as your point of contact. Keep an eye open for a letter from us. So in order to get this interview, in order to get into this interview, you're going to need to respond to an email that we send to confirm your interview date and time. These interviews are the last step in our admissions pipeline for our program. So after this stage, after your interview is done, you'll be notified by the School of Graduate Studies and by the Molecular Genetics Department and by me when a formal decision about your application has been made. And if we've decided to make you an offer, you'll get that note directly from me. So keep your eyes on your inbox. So right now, we are looking for the class of 2024 to join us in September. And we really want people who are excited about genomic medicine. We want people who want to get the training that they need to be ready for this huge gap that's going to need to be filled at the intersection of genetic and genomic research, clinical practice, informatics and data analysis, bioethics, and new biomedical technology. All of these industries are changing and new ones are popping up all the time to accommodate the changing landscape of genomic medicine. And so we have every reason to believe that some of the most in-demand jobs for our grads 2 years from now are going to be the ones that are only just now being developed to really meet the needs of this exciting new field. So we know there's a need for people with this kind of education, and we're going to give our students the tools that they need to really situate themselves in this field and to solve problems in the field and to carve out really exciting careers for themselves in a bunch of different areas. So I'm going to stop talking soon by saying we are now accepting grad applications for a September 2022 start date. In a moment, we're going to move into the second part of our info session, which is a panel discussion with some of our current students. But I'll also note that you're more than welcome to reach out directly to me or to our general emails account. Both of those contact points are up here on the slide. You're welcome to reach out at any time if you have questions about the program or about the application process. If you have questions about how to apply, or about connecting with references, or about the program in general, I would really encourage you to reach out. I also strongly encourage you to keep in touch with us in other ways. So find us on social media, check out our program website or our student blog. So I've already posted our program website a few times, but look us up on Instagram. We have a great Instagram account now. And find our student-led blog. This is uftmedicalgenomics.blog.home, and every single thing that's written on that blog has been written by a current student or a past student. So that's all I'm going to say. Before I hand the mic over, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing for the rest of the session. So in a minute, we're going to have a student panel so you can hear about the program from a selection of our wonderful current students. After the panel is done, we're going to move into sort of like a choose your own adventure breakout room where you're going to be able to hear from and ask questions directly to some of our core faculty members and our student ambassadors who are here in the session with us about a whole bunch of different topics, including things like career prospects after the program, the capstone practicum, getting your application package ready, and a bit about our core MedGen curriculum. So that's the plan for the rest of our time together. Now I'm going to ask another one of our core faculty members and the coordinator of our capstone practicum project, Dr. Johanna Carroll, to take the mic. And I'm going to welcome our fantastic student panelists to take the virtual stage. And we're going to begin our live discussion. So as we go through the live discussion, feel free to write any of the questions you have about the program or how it works or what the admissions process is like, anything else you'd like to know. Feel free to drop those kinds of questions in the chat, where in addition to our panelists, we also do have other current student reps who are going to be waiting to answer your questions. So I'm going to stop sharing now somehow.
And while you're figuring out how to stop sharing your screen, Erin, I will ask the student panelists, so Sornuja, Elvira, Meredith, and Jordan, if you're here, to turn on your cameras so that we can see you. You should move to, great. Hey everyone, and I see Erin has figured out how to stop sharing her screen, so great. Welcome everyone, and I know there's a lot of questions in the chat that have been coming up, and I think people have been responding to it, but you know, sometimes we're not able to keep up with all of the questions. So if you type a question in the chat and it's not answered, or also sometimes if it's a long answer, like Erin said, please stay on after this discussion, and you'll have plenty of time to ask those really specific admissions related questions, for example, in the breakout rooms. So what we're going to be doing for the next 20 minutes or so is having a chat with some current students. So we have two first-year students, or two students who have just finished their first year, just finishing up their first year, and two students who have just finished up their second year and are graduating. And we're going to have a discussion with them so you can hear from students in the program what it's like to be a student in the MedGen program, what they're interested in, and why they chose the program. So to kick it off, if each of you could go around and just introduce yourself, tell us what your background was coming into the program. Where did you go to undergrad? And if you came right from undergrad, what was your major? If you worked for a bit before starting, what did you do before starting the program? So I'll go around my screen. I see Jordan, you're next to me. So maybe we can start with you, Jordan.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is Jordan Chalmers. I am a second year, or I guess technically a newly almost grad. I went to Queen's University for my undergrad, where I did a 4-year Bachelor of Science degree honors. I did a specialization in biology and psychology, and then focused on genetics for my research thesis in 4th year. Before starting this program, I did take a year off, and I worked over in a genotyping facility for 1 year. And then I applied and got accepted and started my time here. And now we're 2 years later, done. It's been really great.
Thanks, Jordan. Sornuja, do you want to go yet?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sornuja, and before joining the MedGen program, I did my undergrad at U of T. I was a molecular genetics specialist, and I had a computer science minor. And as soon as I graduated, I knew I wanted to stay at U of T, and so I chose the MedGen program.
Great, thanks. Meredith.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I did my undergrad at University of Ottawa, and it was a Bachelor of Science in Psychology with a minor in Health Science. And then I actually worked for a number of years before starting the program. I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go right out of undergrad, so I worked as a research coordinator in the genetics department at Sick Kids. And that's sort of where I got my interest in genomics. And so after that, I applied to the program, and it was the best decision for me.
Thanks, Meredith. And Elvira.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here with you today. My name is Elvira, and I'm a first-year medical genomics student. I did my undergrad degree in Thomson Rivers University in Kamloops, British Columbia, and I specialized in cellular, molecular, and microbial biology. I knew probably in my second year that I was going to pursue genetics for my future studies. So right after I graduated from my undergrad, I went on to doing this program. So yeah, this is me.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much. So now I was hoping if each of you could tell us why did you choose the medical genomics program? What was it about the program that made you decide to submit that application and then check yes on the box to accept your offer of admissions? Maybe we can go around the circle again.
Yeah, I can start. I can definitely say I've kind of always wanted to do further education in genetics specifically. So I actually did look at the molecular genetics originally I looked at molecular genetics at U of T, but for me, it came down to the whole professional master's. I also just found that this specific program was going to offer me more specifically what I wanted in my future, which was just a much broader base for genetics and like knowledge that way. So I know that was a huge component for me, was just getting that base education kind of really solidified.
So I guess for me, during my undergrad, I absolutely fell in love with genetics, and I knew it was something I wanted in my future career. But I didn't necessarily see myself following a traditional route in academia, doing a master's and then a PhD. And I was really interested in looking at careers in industry. And then I found the medical genomics program. And like Jordan said, this program sets you up with a broad range of skills you can use in a variety of positions, whereas a master's or a PhD might train you with very niche skills for a very particular topic. So I think this is one of the major factors that attracted me to this program.
I found out about the program through my work at Sick Kids. A few of my colleagues and supervisors were guest lecturers for the program. So that's how I initially heard about the program. And it really piqued my interest. I wanted to, be able to advance in my career in genetics. I was a research coordinator, but with a Bachelor of Science, there's only so far you can go with that. So this felt like a good next step. Similar to my peers here, I liked that the program was a professional master's. I wanted something that would set me up for a career. And I, at this point, wasn't really thinking of continuing on to a PhD. So I wanted something that would really provide me the skills to, get a job in advance right away.
All right. And yeah, with me, my decision to pursue genetics as a future career was largely influenced by one of the professors that I had in undergrad. I did 2 projects under his supervision, and all we did was talk about the future of genetics and genomics, and I just got hooked. So when it came down to me actually deciding what master's program I would like to apply to, I was deciding between molecular genetics, which is a research-based, and genetic counseling, where you mostly interact with patients, which is also something that I would consider doing. And I wanted eventually to do something where I can do both, so clinical and research work, and have a possibility to maybe going into my PhD later on. And so once I saw the announcement about this program, I just knew that it kind of combines everything into one program. It provides you with enough transferable skills to work in the industry, and you can also move on and do research work if you would like. So I think that's what appealed to me the most about the program. And I'm really enjoying it so far. It is great.
Yeah, I think that leads into, I saw there was a question in the chat where someone asked, how do you feel about the program after 1 year or 2 years in? And I saw Jordan already answered, but maybe you want to expand on that. And if anyone else wants to chime in, how they feel after, 1 year, after year one or after year two.
I can just say something really quick, I guess. One of the things for me, I took on a big role in bioinformatics towards the last year of my practicum and the program in my practicum. I did a lot of bioinformatics. And I can definitely say that one of the coolest things was really seeing the way that we learn how to do pipelines. We learn how to work with big genome data, which I've taken bioinformatics before in undergrad. And it was specific to biologists, but it had nothing really to do with genetics, and it barely touched upon biology. So I think it was really cool to see, the way that we're creating this big genome data, and then we're actually we're analyzing it. And then on top of that, we're then using that analysis in like direct translation in research and clinical fields. So I just thought that was really rewarding to really see the way that you're learning and then the way it's being directly applied to your potential career path.
Great. Does anyone else want to chime in there about how you feel about the program after year one or year two?
I guess I can add a little part. This is less about our coursework, but kind of our environment in the MedGen program. The MedGen program has potentially the most welcoming environment you'll find in a graduate program, especially at U of T. We're a huge university in a huge city. It's easy to feel like you're just a number or just a random project, but here we really have a tight-knit community who's so supportive. I love that about the MedGen program.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, we're sort of a smaller program, and that really lends itself to us getting to know each other. Like all the students are really, I think, close, and we work together on projects and things like that. So that's always really fun. And I've just really enjoyed how, I guess, relevant all the coursework is. And also you can really tell that each year the faculty work really hard to make the classes and what you're learning as up to date as possible. I think, there are times when we'd have papers for us to read that were published like within a few months of us learning about it in class. So they really work to keep up. I mean, Erin had mentioned how fast-paced the field is. So the program really keeps up with that. And I think that's really important as well.
Great. I don't know, Elvira, did you have anything you wanted to add there before we move on? You don't have to.
I think the best thing about graduating this first year is how excited I got again. So, this excitation before you just applying to the program, you're just excited to start something new, you're passionate, you're determined. And then it kind of goes down, after a year doing schoolwork, it becomes this whole routine again. But now we've kind of finished this big portion of the coursework, and now we're all looking for different opportunities to work or volunteer actually in the field. And again, it becomes so exciting because you get to communicate with different professors, you get to communicate with a lot of guest lecturers who come in regularly to give lectures in advanced human genetics and genomic methodologies, and those are very established people in the industry. And this is really humbling to be able to talk to them, and you just get motivated all over again. And this is really exciting for sure. So it's never going to be boring once you get into the program, that's for sure.
Yeah, so maybe you guys could talk about what a typical day looks like for you in the program. You've each kind of talked about that, but how did you spend your time? Maybe Jordan and Meredith could talk a little bit about what it's like as a second-year student, and as Harnujan Elvira can discuss as a first-year student what that's like. Jordan or Meredith, do you want to jump on?
I can start. So specifically, I guess with second year, I think one of the coolest things was that we kind of went from learning very genetic intensive stuff. And then we kind of went into this like ethics and communication. And I think it's things that people kind of overlook, especially. So like, I also think it's really cool the way that in our ethics course, we have real clinicians. So we kind of get this perspective from their end as well, that I think just lab stream people couldn't really get. So I thought that was really cool in second year. And then the communications, I mean, I don't think anyone truly realizes how hard it is to communicate such really intense pieces of information to just the lay audience. Learning how to do that was very, very interesting. But it helps you talk to just people around you. When people ask you, you know, like, oh, what program are you in? You can actually explain it to them a bit better when you're in second year, I think, than when you were in first year. But yeah, second year is a little bit more, I would say, relaxed, but definitely equally as rewarding when it comes to what you're learning.
Yeah, I think it's relaxed maybe in the first semester, and then the second semester you start the practicum, and that's essentially like a full-time job. So, you know, you're working sort of, well, depending on your project and your supervisor and that sort of thing, but typically you're kind of working 9 to 5 as in a job sort of situation, working on your project. For students, it's sort of different depending on what you're doing. And for me, during second year in the first semester, I was taking classes. So classes would typically in the morning, and then I was also working part-time. So kind of balancing that schedule as well. But then, yeah, for the practicum, it's like a full-time job. So it's pretty busy.
Great. Yeah. So typically classes, at least in this past year, it was classes in the morning and then the afternoons, except for the practicum. The afternoons you have free to work on classwork or to take on extracurricular volunteer work, part-time work opportunities, things like that. Sir Elvira, do you have anything you want to add there? Or what's it like? What was it like in the first year?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. The first year was pretty intense for me because we had the biological statistics, and I came into the program with really minimal background in computing. So it was a little bit challenging for me. Some of the assignments probably took longer time for me to finish than other students who, for instance, took computing courses, but it's totally fine. I managed to go through the course and it was very rewarding to complete it. But yeah, so every week we were doing assignments. So every day you have classes for two or 3 hours, and then you should expect to dedicate at least 2 hours, I want to say, to do the homework and preparation for lectures. And every week you will have something due. This is a high intensity course. But people still do part-time work. I tutor on the side. I tutor high school students. So usually I have my classes and then I go to the library for a couple of hours and do some work. And then I have my students and then I go home, relax for some time. And then before bed, I still do some reading in preparation for the next morning lectures. So yeah, this is usually how it goes. We have people who work full-time even, but I personally do not know how they manage everything. It's definitely complicated. So I feel like part-time is manageable. Full-time can be a little intense. So Nuja, do you have anything to add?
Not too much to add. It's pretty similar for me. I believe Elvira lives near campus. I'm a commuter. So one thing I love, and I think a lot of the commuters appreciate, is that we have morning classes. So you're never stuck coming home really late. So I commute to school, have our 2 or 3 hour class, commute back home, and usually I take a break and then start our work. Like Elvira said, 2 to 3 hours per day. And I had a part-time job, which I thought was manageable as well. A lot of us also volunteer alongside jobs, which is manageable. It's tough but manageable. And obviously, it's not always study. Like if a big assignment just finished, a lot of us will, go out to eat or something just to celebrate. So there are times for celebration as well in the MedGen program.
I also just want to quickly add in that like I personally, my first year was just school. I didn't have any really volunteer. I don't think I had any job, nothing. It was really just school. In my second year, I started to do some volunteering and over the summer and stuff like that. But don't also feel like you need to or anything like that, because yeah, you don't. it's you want to focus on school, that's totally okay. And we also have like student office space where we can go and do work after class, which is also very useful for people who maybe commute and they just want to get straight to work for a bit.
Great. And I know I haven't been able to keep track of all of the questions coming up in the chat, but I sense there's a lot of surrounding admissions. And so I guess, do any of you guys, or if you had to give one piece of advice for prospective students who are interested in the applying for the program, what would that advice be? Anyone have any advice? Yeah.
I think maybe a good one is just keeping communication with your prior supervisors, because ultimately you're going to need reference letters, right? So the stronger connection and relationship you build with those, the better the letter will be, etc. And just good for future as well, beyond the program. But I would definitely just say, yeah, make sure you're keeping good communication with any potential references.
Great advice. Yeah, that those personal connections can really help because they're able to write something in your letter that to really show that they know you.
Yeah, I think the hardest part of applications is usually finding references, especially when you're an undergrad and you're coming from such a big university. It's tough to find references. So perhaps, I'm not sure if it's too late for you guys because, the May deadline is coming up soon. But people who are looking to apply for maybe future cohorts, start developing those connections with your professors and look for volunteer opportunities, research positions, because they won't only help you for references for this program, but whatever program you choose, those relationships with professors will become very handy.
Yeah, and since references are coming up, and I saw a question like this in the chat earlier, your references don't have to be purely from academic professors, especially if you've been working in the field, and you graduated from undergrad 5 years ago, but yet you've been working in the field. So you can have professional references for this program also. So don't worry that you have to go back and contact a professor from 10 years ago to write you a reference. You can have professional references as well. Meredith, you unmuted yourself, so.
Yes, I think my advice is sort of to be doing what you're already doing by being here is, learn about the program, reach out to faculty members or current students and really learn about the program and if it's something that would be a good fit for you. I mean, obviously it's stressful and it's hard to be putting together application packages and that sort of thing, but if it's something you're really interested in and if you're passionate about this field, then that comes through in the application. So making sure that this is the right program and right fit for you, I think is important.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to agree with Meredith on everything. I think finding the people to talk to just to make sure that this is the right program for you is really important. And we're all happy to answer any one of your questions. So feel free to reach out to us in LinkedIn, emails, anything. We would be happy to chat. And also start learning R, programming language, and Unix shell, because it's going to get helpful in the future once you get into the program, for sure.
Great. And I think that